Assalamu alaikum, Khawateen wa Hazrat. Welcome to the Ambassadors Lounge. This is our third program. We have mandated ourselves to discuss issues of national and international importance. As I said, we are just in the beginning stage, an evolutionary stage, and will depend much upon your advice and your suggestions on how to improve this program. President Trump has withdrawn from the talks. This has created an uncertainty not only within the country but also within the region. To discuss why these talks were cancelled and what its implications would be, short term as well as long term, we will discuss this thing. The panel, as usual, is to my right is Ambassador Tanveer Khaskheli. Sitting next to him is Ambassador Tariq Zamir. To my left is Ambassador Asif Durrani, and he's accompanied by Ambassador Riaz Bukhari. Let's start with you, Asif. What was it which forced President Trump to cancel the talks? Did he get cold feet, or was it some negotiation tactic?
Thank you, Imran. I think it was a mixture of many factors which led to this cancellation. If you recall correctly, if we recall correctly, it was President Trump cancelled this last Saturday, but a day earlier, President Ashraf Ghani, he in fact he regretted to come to Washington. And afterwards, now we are hearing from the Taliban that everything was almost initialed as far as withdrawal agreement was concerned. But all of a sudden, President Trump uh, withdrew from the talks, and his pretext was that Taliban had launched a massive attack in Kabul on September the 5th. That led to many casualties, including one American soldier. So President Trump made killing of American soldier as a pretext. Now, this was not the first time. If you recall, some four American soldiers were killed during the past 2 weeks, and they didn't. They did condemn these killings, but it did not turn out to be the reason for cancellation of the talk, especially when he was talking about Camp David. And Camp David has its own symbolic value in terms of high agreement, and for the presidents, they consider it as the prestige point for them to show at the Camp David that they have achieved something big. So I think that was the probably reason. And the more another reason which has been now discussed by the commentators is the deep state in the United States, especially Pentagon and the CIA. They had differences. They wanted American troops to still stay on in Afghanistan, and President Trump wants them out. He wants them out before his elections, so he will be able to show to the American public that he has withdrawn all American troops, brought the boys back home, and he has also saved approximately $50 billion. So I think these were the factors which will be in fact playing. And as we proceed, then we can
Thank you.
discuss it further.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Sir. Riaz Bukhari. Taliban have claimed that they agreed when this agreement was being signed. They said that they had agreed to partial ceasefire with the Americans, which meant that after the agreement is signed, they will not attack the US forces. But this also implies that they will continue to attack the Afghan forces or the Afghan people till such a time that agreement with the Afghan government is not reached. So, is this? I mean, if the Taliban, if the Americans walk out, would they? And there's a talk about a bad deal. So, how would you define it? Is it a bad deal or what?
Ambassador Imran, as you know, 9 rounds have been held so far between the Taliban delegation and the US government's special envoy in Afghanistan. This has led to both the parties to sign to initial a draft agreement, which according to the news have been also shared with the Qatari government. However, the Afghan government has not been involved in the whole process. That means that the Kabul was not taken on board while agreeing on these conditions. If U.S. forces and other foreign troops are withdrawn from Afghanistan in the next couple of months, as per the initial agreed draft, the Afghan National Army would not be in a position, would not be in a strong position to defend even Kabul, but to talk about the whole of Afghanistan. So I think that was the major reason that President Ashraf Ghani rejected this deal and I think turned down the invitation to travel to Camp David. So in a way, this agreed draft deal was a bad deal for the existing Afghan government in Kabul.
But is it a bad deal for the peace process? Is it a bad deal for the
But I
country?
mean, once on intra-Afghan dialogue starts, then we will come to the point whether it was a bad deal for the peace process or not. So far, it's a good deal for withdrawal of the US troops from Afghanistan.
Okay. Tanveer, um, Bukhari just pointed out that Ashraf Ghani of the Kabul government was not taken into confidence. Um,
But Imran, let me correct here, slight correction, because Ashraf Ghani government also had that initial draft.
they were shown the initial draft
They
by
had handed
Khalilzad.
over a copy,
Yeah.
copy to them, to which the Afghan spokesperson said that they will comment it very soon. And they did comment, which resulted in the postponement of Ashraf Ghani's visit.
But sorry, the news reports I have seen clearly indicates that draft initial agreement main points were shared with the Afghan president, but a copy of the agreed draft was not shared.
Not
This is
sure.
my-
Yes, this
my
is what I have
information.
also heard. This
But
is what
some
I
parts were leaked to the press also.
and that was done by Khalilzad. Okay, is this Tanveer, is this a peace talk? Are these peace talks, or is it just a withdrawal agreement which is being finalized by the? I mean, what Riaz has said. Keeping that in mind, what do you think? Is it a withdrawal agreement or is it a peace deal?
Well, if you look at whatever has been discussed and talked about it, it gives a picture of a withdrawal, and the classic example comes into mind what the Americans did in Vietnam. They were in a hurry to withdraw from there also, and similar was the situation because during the election campaign, President Trump had been talking about it that we'll clear and bring back our troops back home. And that was the reason I think they were continuously doing, and negotiations, the details were not being shared, I think, till the end. And still, the kind of agreement they were working, it was a broader outline. There were no nitty gritties were discussed, and neither they were shared with anybody else. And maybe the mandate given to Mr. Khalilzadeh, who is the chief negotiator, he would have been directly given either by the State Department or the president himself, because as per the news, and as Bukhari mentioned, the last draft was initialed and shared by both the sides, and they were all set to sign and come out with a picture. But I think most importantly, it was more of a the emphasis was on withdrawal. In the later part, definitely ceasefire had to be worked out exactly how to go about that, but it was more of a withdrawal.
Okay. Yes, Tariq. Are the Americans really in a hurry to withdraw? Are there other dynamics at play?
I think so. You see, we have so far covered the political aspects of strategic aspects. One important thing is that after the American invasion of Afghanistan, end of 2001, they started the US Geological Survey. They started surveying Afghanistan in 2004. And they did a couple of thousand, sorties. They had also converted and C3 Orion just to, as a lab to determine what kind of minerals Afghanistan had. And they came up with this report in 2010 saying that Afghanistan, now imagine it's 10 years back, has close to $3 trillion of minerals. Now these minerals and all these wealth, all these everything that has. So you can, it's copper, gold, cobalt, and then rare earth materials, which are used in modern technology like rechargeable batteries and all. So they determined that. Now you might have seen the reports that the Taliban are also using these some of these minerals to sort of run their business. So these they extract these and then they sell it, smuggle it out. I've read it that when once President Trump took over, Ashraf Ghani during his first calls, they were discussing mining in Afghanistan. So mining is that important, and they say that they have been discussing it time and again. In July, the of Ashraf Ghani, he discussed with the German head of state, head of government, about the possibility of extracting these some of these rare material, and sort of they could be used by the industry in Europe. So I think this whole thing, the Afghanistan is so lucrative in terms of minerals and in terms of other than geostrategic and political. It's so lucrative that probably there is some kind of a lack of agreement. What happens if the Americans leave? Who will they leave it to? Who will they leave it all this Afghanistan full of
Wealth.
resources? And who will then take over? And so that, because there was this CNBC report which said that they have spent about $700 billion on the war and the resources are close to $3 trillion. So still they say that okay, we won't be sort of in loss. So this angle is missing, in our mostly in our debate in this country. This angle is missing, that Afghanistan is also a very very resource rich country, and once peace returns, or even if peace doesn't return, mind you, because those who want to extract these minerals and these resources, they can do it. And they don't care about human rights. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about women's rights. Nothing. It will be like Middle East. If they have their fingers in the pie, they'll be happy about it.
And they also are talking about, there are reports that there's a lot of illegal mining taking place there. So besides illegal
Yeah.
mining, there is narco trade, illegal mining, which is helping the Taliban to fill their coffers.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
No,
Yes.
I would just
yes.
like to add,
Yes.
this point. No, I have served in Africa, and I have seen many southern African countries are facing the same situation, such as the Democratic Republic of Congo,
Yeah,
Exactly.
where you have a lot of issues and
Yeah.
problems,
Yeah.
but still mining is ongoing, and the powers that be, they are exploiting that and getting all the benefits, and only part of it is shared with the local workers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is not only in Congo. It's the same thing is happening in Mali. The same thing is happening in Mauritania. Yes, this is the dilemma of the African countries, and in fact, for that matter, the underdeveloped countries. Okay, Tariq, you gave us very interesting perspective. This has, as you said, this has not. I've not come across such argument, but we definitely need to look into this more, do our research. Asif, coming back to you. Now, these talks have 9 rounds of talks have been held so far, right? Uh, it has taken almost 1 year. Now, just tell us briefly, what were they talking? What were they discussing in these talks? Secrecy has been one aspect of everything, but broadly speaking, what were the Taliban and the American delegations discussing?
Imran, what is broadly known is that there are four aspects of the talks. First was withdrawal of the American troops. I mean, we will talk about the agenda, and the agenda is public. First one is withdrawal of the American troops. Second is Taliban's guarantees, assurances that Afghanistan soil would not be used by the terrorists. Excuse me. And the third was intra-Afghan dialogue, and fourth was ceasefire. While on withdrawal and Taliban assurances, they covered a lot of ground. But on intra-Afghan dialogue, They had partial success because they could hold talks in Moscow and Doha, where Afghan people representing different walks of life they participated.
But that was informal, unofficial.
Well, this is the beginning. So they still called it as intra-Afghan but unofficial, and in which even Afghan government representatives they participated in their individual capacities, not as officials of the Afghan government. So that happened, and the last fourth point was ceasefire. On ceasefire, Taliban were not agreeing. In their perception, which was shared by their spokesperson and those who were participating in the dialogue, they were of the view that they cannot come and they cannot agree to a ceasefire unless Americans gave a final withdrawal schedule.
Why? Why would they not agree? Why
Well,
can't they
I
stop
cannot
killing
be
the
their
people?
spokesperson, but whatever they have been saying was that if they stop or if they agree to ceasefire, it means then their foot soldiers and their people on the ground they will become lax, and then they will think that probably something is being reached, and this would give opportunity to others to maneuver our Taliban and all that. This is what we have heard so far. But at the same time, I think Taliban would keep up the pressure while holding dialogue, so they have the upper hand. Even in during these talks, if you look at it, so they have not budged from any of the demands, especially with regard to withdrawal of the American troops.
No, wait a second. So what actually they are doing is they are using violence as a leverage to have their demands fulfilled.
Well, yeah, we can call it violence, but for Taliban, they say we are waging a war of liberation.
What if they use the same leverage, the same violence when they start into the ultimate talks for peace? And that is the intra-Afghan dialogue.
They can-
What if they use this? And what if the Americans have withdrawn?
Yes,
So
they-
what
this-
will happen? That will, it will almost create a civil war-like situation.
Imran, these are all scenarios available and they are possible. And it is possible that Americans may withdraw without having an agreement.
Yeah.
And it would put all the neighbors of Afghanistan, especially China, Russia, Iran, and Pakistan, in a quandary. And then we should brace up for more refugee influx into
Exactly.
Pakistan, Iran, and all that. It would be back to square one. Whether it was in '92 when Najibullah was deposed and Mujahideen came, we still had more refugees.
Yes,
and
right, yeah.
when Taliban came into power,
Yeah.
then we had hundreds and thousands
Absolutely
of
correct.
refugees.
Tanveer, coming to you. Asif, as we have Asif just explained us about what the Americans and the Taliban were discussing, and seeing all these four basic elements, do you think ordinary Afghans have any hopes about these talks? Do they stand to gain anything? Of course, they stand to gain because that would bring peace. But would it really bring peace?
Uh, Keeping the history in view, you know very well, Afghanistan being an underdeveloped country, I would not consider this an ordinary Afghan. I'm not really sure that 100% of the people even know the details of this, what was going on. Maybe the people who are in a position to understand what is going on, definitely as a national, if I'm a Afghan national, keeping myself at that point, I would love to have peace in the country. We've been fighting for 2 decades and rather more than that. So they would love to have that. But keeping hopes, I'm not really sure that because we have seen in the past, in the history, once the Russians withdrawal, all these factions were gathered. They all promised that you will come back and settle down. And as soon as they came back, they started civil war, and that, in fact, really created such a situation within Afghanistan and to the neighboring countries, as pointed out by Asif. So we have to see that Afghans definitely would love to, and as being professed by us also, that we want whatever happens in Afghanistan to be led by Afghan people and to sort out. And we'll be rather more happy than the Afghans if peace comes to Afghanistan.
Let me just add another thing to it. Now, President Trump has withdrawn from the talks, right? I'm sure ordinary Afghans know about it. What do you think is their reaction? It's
Now, as we know that
Let me add here that according to a report by Tolo,
Tulu television.
television, 72% Afghans in Kabul, they favored Trump's decision.
But Kabul
That
is
they
not
want,
representative.
that's what if you
All
go
of
for a
Afghanistan.
Gallup poll kind of a thing, we don't know what is the scale or the number of people.
No,
Tell me what the-
Kabul is not representative of the
whole of country.
because Kabul represents the educated class mostly. Although Kabul's literacy rate is still around 40%. So in that, but they have different groups in Kabul. So they may say yes 70%, but elsewhere we don't know.
We don't know, right?
It's
right.
difficult to judge at this stage, I would say.
Okay, Tariq, coming to you. Now, the talks are stalled. There is uncertainty. Um, there are people who are happy about it. There are countries which are happy about it. There are countries like Pakistan which are concerned. We want the talks. We want the talks to resume. What is the future? Is this a temporary hiatus or is it permanently stalled?
No, I think it's temporary. Look at it from two angles. Trump has to cater for his next elections. And for that, he has to go back to the public and say, look, we, even if they can't sort of have a victory, he can say, we were wasting so much money on it, and now we withdrew, and this war is over. Now this money will be spent on your welfare. The other thing is, there are so many people who will chip into his fundraisers and all these big companies. They're also in a hurry to go and have their share in the Afghan pie. So these are two very important elements. The third is President Trump, as you know, it's very difficult to predict him because today I was reading somewhere that he is contemplating offering $50 billion package to Iran. So if he can make a U-turn with Iran and with North Korea, Afghanistan should be no exception. So I think this will be temporary, and I think they will reach an agreement. And what kind of agreement? That's a different thing to say. But I think you will see, in my view, you will see in not a long distance, not too distant future, an agreement on troops withdrawal, and then the rest of it. Then
Sorry to cut you here. Now, you said the talks will resume.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. This is a point of view. Now there is a lack of trust now between the Taliban and the Americans. Will that affect the talk? How will the Americans approach these talks now?
You see, the point is, it's not a sort of negotiation between, say, gentlemen. It's a negotiation between sort of warring Taliban and then between Trump. So they can always go back and forth, and if they can offer this or they can offer that, and then they can always say, okay, both sides can declare victory in their own way, and they can say, okay, now our misunderstanding have been removed, and we are good friends and maybe brothers also.
And they already lack trust. While they were
Trust-
holding
trust
talks,
was-
so
yeah,
I think
trust
trust
was-
was never established.
Absolutely.
You see,
It's like sleeping with the enemy.
Everything, all these talks, they are based on good faith.
Well, not necessarily.
I mean,
when
all
you're
these
talking-
issues which they are talking
when
about.
you're
How can you
talking-
trust? How can you trust Taliban? They have not committed anything. They have committed on a couple of things, but there are no indications that they have changed their way of thinking. They have changed their ideology. So the element of trust is
No,
not
the Taliban can
Imran-
say the same thing. Why should they trust Trump?
Imran,
Yes.
Or the US administration?
Imran,
It's
if
vice
Taliban,
versa.
Yeah.
if Taliban are not agreeing to what Americans want to say, Americans have also not agreed
To what
about the
Taliban?
withdrawal. They are not giving the exact schedule of withdrawal.
The commitment, not firm
This is
commitment.
what the agenda point says. Whether it's number one is withdrawal and second is the Taliban assurances. So here there's no trust, it means. Had there been trust and they by and large they agree for withdrawal, then where is the time schedule? So that should be there. So it has to be a realistic approach when we talk about both. And as far as Taliban are concerned, they consider themselves as to be heir apparent. They think
I
that
think Americans also consider them as their appearance. Thank you. Riaz, coming to you. Elections are scheduled for September 28th. Uh, do you think Afghans are ready for this democracy? And do you, particularly as we have discussed now, the Taliban who are not necessarily in Kabul, not the urban Taliban, the urban Afghans,
Yeah.
do you think they are ready for elections? The Western style of
You
democracy?
know, the President Ghani is on an extended, tenure, which should be ending by the end of this month. And elections are, I think, scheduled on 28th of September.
Yeah.
We don't see any visible activity going on in the whole country, maybe in Kabul, on certain points. Some candidates have started their campaign. But there are two key issues. One is funding. Do they have sufficient amount available with the government to conduct elections in Afghanistan? And number two, if they are credible, donors to make the necessary amount available to them in such a short, period. So I don't think elections. I have some of my doubts that elections are going to be held so soon as already announced. As regarding the discussion which
You
was
mean to
going
say
on,
you are not sure or that elections will be held as
announced
Mhm.
on 28th, because very few days, are left, and there is no, election campaign going on in the country. There are some candidates, I have noted some reports, they have started, some corner meetings, I would say, not larger meetings, as they were waiting for the, Doha round to complete, and then they would come in a big way to contest elections. This has not happened so far. Maybe in the next 2 weeks, something positive happens that actually elections are held in the country.
Okay, gentlemen, we are running out of time. The final thoughts, each has 1 minute. Asif, we'll start with you. Quick.
Well, I agree with the assumption that these talks will be resumed, and Americans will leave finally. And but the major question would be whether Taliban can consolidate Afghanistan. I hope the country does not plunge into a civil war.
Thank you very much. Yes, Tanveer.
Well, my only question was, as Bukhari was mentioning, the elections, are they going to be held, postponed, or extended again? Because the talks are not completed, the elections are not held. So where does Afghanistan stands? Because anything happening in Afghanistan has a direct bearing on Pakistan.
Thank you.
And we
Yes,
wish-
Tariq.
Thank you, Imran. These talks or all this conflict is about resources in Afghanistan. Once they have an agreement about the distribution, fair or unfair, there'll be an agreement. Talks will resume. I'm sure even now there are still some activities taking place behind the scene. Talks will resume sooner or later.
Thank you very much. Yes, Bukhari, your
If
final
talks
words.
are not resumed, the Afghans should be prepared to see some additional bodies. And second point is, Taliban needs to work to improve their image.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we come to the conclusion of our program. The general consensus is that the talks will resume. These talks are important for peace and stability, not only of Afghanistan, but also of the region. Thank you very much for watching.